Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Adam's running a little behind. He's coming out of another meeting. Hopefully you all can hear me, but we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Thomas Davis. I'm actually going to be presenting today. Adam was going to be the host, but that's okay. So a couple of housekeeping things real quickly. Again, as if you've been on here before, you know this is being recorded. So if that is an issue for your organization, you may want to go ahead and drop now. And we record this so we can put it out in the community and on our YouTube channel as well. So for later reference, if you need that. And this is for you. So make sure that you ask questions if you have questions. And again, we'll do a Q&A at the end of this, and we'll generally answer questions about the content that we're sharing today. And then we'll go into other questions if we have time to do that. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to talk about advanced reporting features for report admins. So for some of you that you may find some of this stuff a bit elementary, but we thought it was important to kind of go over some of these things and highlight them to kind of show you some of the things that are available out there. Maybe you're aware of them, maybe you're not. But this also can be a really great reference tool for you as, for different organizations. So when you actually have new people that come in, you can actually point them to this particular academy session and, say, hey, here's some great things that I want you to learn, because you are going to get the report admin role. So, go check that out. And, as part of the training sort of regimen that you may have. And there are some demos in this presentation, not necessarily for every topic that we talk about, but for some of them. So again, it's a great tool just for reference, and hopefully you'll learn something that maybe that you don't know necessarily that is available out there for report admins. So with that, what is a report admin? So report admins have the ability to access enhanced reporting features that other reporting roles do not. So again, in this academy session, we're just kind of going to go through and discuss some of those things and demo a few of them. So just by default, report admin role can manage, share, publish, and schedule all reports, can access report administration and manage all report-related objects. And the report admin role inherits all the other reporting roles. So not only are we going to talk about some of the things that report admins can do, but there's a couple other things that we wanted to add in that report admins can't do, but we thought that they were features that were we should highlight, and those will require a couple other roles that we'll actually mention those as we get to them. But in the grand scheme of things, this is what a report admin is. There is some advanced things that they can do compared to some of the other reporting roles, and we're going to talk about those. So what are the features that report admins can actually access, and what we'll kind of talk about today? So report statistics. So this is something that probably all of you are familiar with, or you should at least be familiar with it. This is a great way for you to look and see what's actually being utilized inside of your instance as it relates to reporting, which reports are being used the most, which ones are taking the longest to run, which ones are not being ran at all. So maybe you can actually clean up some of the reports that are out there. So we'll look at that a little bit. Next, we'll talk about report sources. And these are, ways to predefine data sets for creating reports. It's also a really good way to put in some governance around the way that people are actually reporting on their data inside of reports. So we'll touch on that a little bit. We'll talk about ranges, another really great feature that allows you to take maybe information that is a lot on a particular bar graph or a pie chart and actually group those into different things that have value. So another way of looking at it. We'll talk about creating the map, which you can do there, do some reporting on a map and, creating different map sources and things like that. And then we'll talk about create coloring rules for multi-pivot records. So taking a multi-pivot grid and actually applying some colors inside of that based on different, levels of particular numbers or whatnot. And you can do that at the font level and also the actual cell level. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about, creating color rules around single score reports. So a score means something. Let's put some, maybe some color to it to drive action to it based on what that color actually means. And then we'll look at chart colors, the ability to actually change the colors of the reports. We at ServiceNow put some really, bright and vibrant colors to most of the reporting, but actually having the ability to put some colors there, again, that drive action is a really good feature, and we'll show some of that. And then we'll talk about color definitions, where you can actually set and define different colors for the whole entire system uses inside of reports, and then color schemes. So we can talk about maybe there's some different blues that you like to use, or greens, or oranges, or red, or whatnot, and you can create those and add those in there as well. So with that, let's talk about the first one. So in this here, you can actually see where we're going to look at report statistics. Again, having the ability to see what was the recent runtime of all the different reports, how many of those reports are actually not being ran. So again, if you want to look and clean up some of your information, here we're looking at the recent runtime. So, which ones and how long did it take for you actually that particular report to look at? And then maybe you want to see, which ones are actually not being ran at all. So we don't want to see any of the ones that haven't been ran. So then we can trim that down a little bit more. And then seeing which one of those, the most used reports are actually being ran. So again, report statistics, if you've not been to it, there's a lot of different ways that you can actually look at this data. But again, it should help you keep your data actually cleaner. If there's reports that are out there that are not being used, here's a good way of finding that out. Get rid of those things. They're not necessary to be there. If there's reports that are taking a long time to run, here is a way of seeking those out and finding those. So again, utilize the report statistics, and there is a sort of another level to it under performance analytics, the admin console. You can look at report usage, but this actually requires the PA admin role, and it actually is, rather than it being a list view, which what we're seeing on the screen here, it's an actual dashboard where you can actually get more information about report usage as well. So if you need somebody to have that, then they would also need to be able to have the PA admin in order to see that. So next, let's talk about report sources. So if you've not used report sources, again, it is a really great way for you to put some governance around the way that data is actually being reported on inside of reports. Quite often, there's situations where someone may be looking at, we'll just say open instance for an example, and they're looking at it one way, and then somebody else generates an open instance report, and they're getting different numbers, but they should be exactly the same. The way to fix that is to use report sources and define for your users the way that they should actually be pulling that information back. And another way that you can actually do that is that if you actually create a report that is the exact way that you want all of everyone to actually report on that particular data in your organization, generate a report source directly from that report. And there is actually a blog that I wrote a couple years ago that actually talks and shows exactly how to do that. And that link is here, as you can see over on the right. So when this goes out in the community tonight, when we're finished and it's there, there'll be a PDF of this presentation, and you actually be able to get that. But it's on the community. So again, if you need governance, report sources is a great way to really enforce governance around the way that data is being reported on. So report ranges. So this is a really a great tool that gives you the ability to take where you have a situation where maybe you're looking at a lot of information in a bar chart or a pie chart, and you'll actually see that here in a second, where we're looking at a report at a pie chart, and there is an abundance of results that come back, and it happens to be around SLA, and there's just a better way to actually look at that, and report ranges is the way to do that. Going into report ranges and setting, looking at the particular table that you're looking at the element, and then what an upper value is, and being able to do, betweens and like here, and again, associating some color. So here you'll see that the particular report that we're going to look at, like I said, it just has a lot of data in it. And there is a much better way of looking at this particular data. And the way that we can do that is around report ranges. So here we're looking at incident completion, SLA breakdown. And when we click on this, you'll see that, just way too much information to really gather any sort of information out of. And there it is. So you can't really get anything out of that. I mean, I guess you could look for some very specific things if you knew what you were looking for. But again, there's just a much better way of looking at that information here. And, you have to scroll actually twice there in that legend. Here we'll go and we'll actually look at, I believe, the ranges, unless I skipped a whole part of it. No, there we go. Yeah, so we're going to go to the ranges and we're going to actually create some ranges to apply to that particular report. And in here, we're going to see that we're going to just call this one under 75%. And we're going to turn it, we're going to make sure that it's green. And then we're going to look for the same table that we built our report off of, which is incident SLA. And we'll select that. And then the element inside of that we're going to look at is the actual elapsed time, which is the same thing that we're looking at for our report, what we're grouping it by. And then we're just going to say, okay, anything that is 75, we want to see that in green. So here we'll go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to submit it. And then we'll go back into it. And I'm going to utilize the insert and stay and basically, create all of the other values that we want as well, which is between 75% and 100%. And then we'll make that yellow. And we'll give the upper value the way that we need to, which is 100 there. And we'll change our order to 200. And then we will save that. We'll insert and stay that. And I made a typo mistake there. I have an ampersand rather than a percent. I need to fix that. And then I'll just save it again. And then we'll do another insert and stay, and we'll do above the SLA percentage that we want. So we'll just put above 100%, change that to red, set our upper value to really anything above 100. For this case, I just put 1,000. Nothing's going to be over 100, but basically just saying anything that is outside of that, we'll set this to 300, and then we'll go ahead and insert and stay on this one. And then when we go back to our report, we'll go ahead and update that. And then when we go back and we look at our ranges, you can see here that we have all three of those that are applied the way that we need. And then we'll go ahead and use our recent, and we'll go, or I guess I'm going to look here and go back to the actual report. And then we can see the way that it's grouped is much more efficient, much more valuable, rather than having all of those different results. We're just going to see the three colors. And I think there is some other in there where they actually don't fall inside of that, which is kind of weird, maybe a little bit of a bug. But here, when we look at it, it's so much easier to see what we have here. So it's just a better way of looking at it. So if you've never utilized those, I would definitely recommend that you do that. Next, let's talk about creating a map. So you have the feature to create a map and actually look at the lat and longs of particular information. You can look at it at the country level. You can look at it at the state level. You can look at it at county level if you have that. And I was actually trying to look at some data by congressional lines. And again, you can see all of that information and drill down into it. You have the ability to basically bring in any JSON information, GeoJSON that you can grab out there, and you can actually put that into when you create a map source, and then you can apply that to incident caller, close by location. There's a slew of really what you can apply that to. And again, another great feature of the way that you can present information and see the information, reporting information at a geographical standpoint. So if that's not something that you've ever done, you should look at that. And there's a really great ServiceNow doc that actually will walk you completely through that. And this is actually a screenshot from that particular doc. So again, I think that we could probably spend an entire academy session on a mapping, and maybe that's something that we do in the future. But if it's not something that you've done, take a look at some of the ones that are already out there that come out of the box. There are some reports that come out of the box for mapping. Take a look at those. It may provide you everything that you need, or it may stimulate you to actually think of different ways that you can look at data from a mapping standpoint. So again, another great way of looking at data. And, you can set, some default map for map reports. So if there's different maps that you want to make sure that that's the one that is looked at, you can set those as well. And again, another way of governance around what you're actually looking at. So just another great way for, to look at information around any sort of thing, change request, incident, or whatnot. So the next thing that we're going to look at is create coloring rules for multi-level pivot reports. So this is a way of taking a pivot report and, again, drawing some action to it. So pulling the eyes to something that mean different things. So in this case, we're going to look for any number that is 1 and also anything that is above 1, and say, hey, I want to attach a color to that, and again, draw some values. It will not do the colors, apply the colors to the totals inside the pivot grid. But here you can see that once I hit OK here, now we've taken a pivot report that wasn't necessarily much value and actually changed that, where now we can actually see some information. And in this case, we're saying, okay, if it is at least 1, I want to look at it and it's yellow. And if it's anything greater than 1, change that to red. I could have put some green into that, but green is what we should be at. So it's not necessarily a need to show the green. It's really drawing our eyes to anything that is caution or anything that is above that caution. So again, if you've never utilized it, there's a really great ServiceNow doc that talks about that, and we'll walk you exactly through it. Of course, we're doing it right here. So, definitely utilize that as well. And keeping sort of on that same thing, if you've ever needed to take a single score and again, put some color towards that, you can do that directly, and right inside of the style, you can edit the coloring rules on a single score. And again, it looks familiar because it is the same place. And again, here we're going to say anything that's greater than 10, because we're looking at open incidents, put that as yellow. And the rule order is 1, and then we'll submit that. And then we'll just add another one that says, okay, anything that is higher than, I believe I put here 25, then we want to turn that red. So I want to know anything that is, really standing out for me. And this is basically incidents that are open greater than a day. So, if I have quite a few of those that have been open, at least 25 or more, then I need to make sure that I look at that. Again, these are just examples. There's probably other ways that you can think to put some, drive to action to those. Again, I could have used green. I personally kind of stay away from green because that is the expectation. I want to make sure that it does something that is outside of what our expectation is. So if you've never used this feature, this is a really great feature that you can use as well, again, to drive some action towards that. So color charts. So here is an example of, we're looking at open incidents by priority. And again, maybe the colors that come out of the box by default don't really drive any action. Maybe you want to say, okay, I want to look at this report in the sense of, if it's a priority 1, then I think that should be red. I think that if it's a priority 2, it's not as bad as a red, but it's not as good as a caution. It is still sort of drive some action to that. So what I've done here is I've taken all of those, the priorities, and I'm setting those to whatever they are. So this is a priority of 1. I'm going to remove that out of the color there and update that. And then I go through the same thing and I set all of those to the colors that I want them to be. Maybe it's not these particular colors for you, but the way that I built this out was the mindset of bad, not as bad. Hey, you need to look at it. This is okay. And then the planning priority, you'll see here I put in gray, because that's kind of like in planning, it's kind of neutral to what's going on, but it's still there and we need to acknowledge it. So when we're done with this, and we actually bring the report back, again, it's not just some random colors as it relates to priority. It's one that really should, draw some action. And any of those that are in red, click directly into that pie chart and go to those particular incidents that are priority 1 and know that an action needs to be taken to those because they are priority 1. And this one, because I did add a green, I didn't go straight green. I kind of went greenish yellow because there still should be some observation to those particular incidents. But again, here, I'll just make planning gray because again, it's kind of neutral. It's kind of like, hey, we're thinking about doing something, but once it's set to a different priority, then it'll actually be something here. So I'm going to go to my recent. I'm going to go back to that report, and here we can see that it is much different than looking at just random colors. I don't care for the green now that I look at it, but I can easily go back in there and I can change that to a green that actually means something. But now you can draw the eyes, and there can be some drive to action around this. We know that these are the ones that we need to look at right now, and then so on and so forth as everything sort of goes down. So again, another great way of looking at data. If you've done that, really good job on your account. If you have not, you should definitely try to look at doing those things. So next, we'll look at color definitions. So what color definitions give you the ability to do? So in the previous one, we set it on a particular element, as in priority. You could do priority, state, anything around that. What a color definition does is it gives you the ability to actually set your colors for all the reporting that's going to be done inside of your instance. Again, another great way of putting some governance around the way that colors should be. If there's a color palette that your organization uses, maybe it's something that's around your branding, you can do all of that right inside of the color definition. So again, maybe that's something that you've thought about. Maybe somebody has asked you, hey, how do we do some reporting around our branding? How do we do some reporting around these particular colors? And then make sure it's done for all of the particular reporting. You can do that directly in the color definition table and set those directly there. And again, there's a really great doc that'll walk you through that as well. So chart color schemes. So this one is when you're actually looking at a particular report, and maybe it's a bar graph, and maybe you said, okay, I want this to be blue, but I want it to start out in a really, light shade of color blue. And as maybe the numbers get higher, then that will progress in a blue. Here is where you can set those particular ones. You can create any ones of your own. If you have the color wheel and you know what those values are, you can absolutely create a new color scheme and utilize that inside of your reports. So again, it's another way of giving you some leeway in applying the colors that you want for your organization. You don't have to keep the very bright colors that we send out of the box. If you want to put some value and some action around any of those, again, another way to do that. And you see this quite often in bar graphs where you see where something, progresses up from a different lighter to darker, those kind of situations. But again, if you have all of that information, you can definitely create one of these yourself. So one thing that I wanted to sort of highlight, and this does actually require a little bit of an elevated role, is actually doing some custom things to calendar reports. You can create a calendar report inside of the reporting module, but if you ever needed to do some extra things to that calendar report, the ability to do that is out there. You may have to engage someone else with a role that can do that, but you can definitely do that. And I actually have a demo after this slide of one of these things that I did do to kind of show you. But the first one here talks about modifier add calendar report sys properties. So if there's extra things that you want to do inside of a calendar event, if you want to highlight specific things that come up into the calendar based on the reporting that you're looking at, if you want to change the day that the calendar week starts on, limit the number of events displayed, you can see those things and do those actual particular things. Quite often I see in the community where someone will ask, maybe not necessarily around calendars, but it kind of leads into us. I want to be able to start my work week on a different day. Well, if you need to do that inside of a calendar, if you're utilizing calendars for, say, incident you can actually start that calendar on a different day and actually attach some colors to that. You can set how many different things you want to see on a particular day. We're going to see here in a minute. There was the one that we look at has 7 different things on one particular day, but you can do that, right? And then you can also highlight, calendar reports, events. So if there's a particular event that you're showing on it and you want to apply some color to that, you can definitely do that. And then set persistent highlighting for calendar criteria. If you want to do that, there's some things there where you can actually apply those particular highlighting to those different things as well. And then again, there we're talking about the custom start and end date. You can apply all of those different things to a calendar as well. Again, some elevated roles there, but there's some really nifty things that you can do to a calendar report. Don't feel like you create a calendar report and what you see is what you get. There is some extra things that you can actually do there as well. And here's an example of one. So in this case, I'm looking at a particular day and I'm looking at, I need more information. Here it's showing the incident number and the short description, but I actually want to see if I can add the state to that. So the way that you need to do this, and this would be an admin role, is you can go here in this example, I went to the incident role, and then I went to configure the dictionary. I want to configure the dictionary that's actually showing that information on the calendar. And it's the very first result here in this table, which actually gives me the ability to add some information in there. So once I get there, I want to go to the advanced view because I want to change the attributes. There are some attributes that are already there. Here you can see where we're looking at the short description, the number, and all I'm gonna do is add a colon and I'm gonna say state. Now I wanna add state into what I'm actually viewing inside of that result. So I've added that, and when I go back to that particular calendar report, sorry, it's moving kind of fast, and I'll pause it here. You can see once I click on it, that now not only do I see the number, but I also see the short description, and I can also see the state. So here's an ability for you to see other different things that you want. Now, obviously, there is a limit on how big this box is here. So maybe the short description is too much, but you want to look at the number and the state and the priority. You could just remove the short description out and add that in. So again, it's another way of adding in more detail to what you actually see. It would require you bringing in your admin to do those particular things. But again, another great way of bringing more value to what you're actually looking at inside of that calendar, inside of the report itself. So another thing that is just an abundance of different things that you can change is the reporting properties. So there is, you can go into report administration and then go to properties, and you can see all of the different reports that are there. I mean, properties that are there for reports. This is just a small screenshot. But again, just looking at what we can see here, if they're the access label, how many characters do you want to allow? I've seen that inside of the community where someone will say, hey, I need more characters for my X-axis label. How do I do that? You do all of those particular things right inside of the reporting properties. And again, there's a long list of those. No way I could fit them all here. But if I would definitely encourage you that if you're not familiar with all the different properties that are out there, get an opportunity and look at those and some of the things that you may get asked for personally, or things that you need to change yourself because it'll bring more value to your report. You can do all of those right inside of the properties for reporting. So again, take a look at those and see what you're able to sort of change there. The next thing, which is fairly new, but it is such a powerful feature inside of reporting. And we actually did an academy session not too long ago where we had our the product manager for this actually do a really good presentation on function fields. But again, we wanted to make sure that we highlighted this, this is something that you can use. And again, you can see there are some elevated roles there, admin and function field admin, that someone would need in order to do that. But this is something that is new right inside of the reporting. And you can literally create some really dynamic functions to apply directly on the report. And, you can create functions directly on the data. And you can see here, just kind of from looking at the screenshot here, that you're basically adding operations of what you can do, So again, if you were not on that Academy session, and I've referenced it here, I would definitely recommend that you go and look at that, because I think that is another great tool that can add, again, some action, some great value to the reporting that you're doing. And it just gives you an opportunity to make, much more dynamic reporting for the people that you're creating reporting for, even if for yourself or for other people. Just another great thing that we wanted to make sure that we highlighted. I know that we were supposed to be talking about just report admins, but a couple of these last things I think were important for us to highlight to you, and look at those different things. And another one that I didn't get an opportunity to put on it is, multiple data sets and drill downs. There's a great, Academy session that I did, and I'll make sure that I add that to the community event when I update this. That's another thing that, again, brings really good value to reports. So rather than it being a one level in the sense of it's a bar chart, you click on a bar, it goes to the actual records. Maybe you want to go from that and go to another report. So multiple data sets and drill downs is the way that you can actually do that. And again, just makes you that much more powerful in what you're actually able to present to all of the people that that you show reporting for. So in conclusion, the big thing is, and I know that was kind of fast and it was a lot of different things, but I have all of the links here where you can actually go and learn how to do those. And then, again, you can start and stop this Academy session when you watch it, if you reference back to it, to slow down the demos that I did. But again, there's quite a bit of advanced reporting features that are out there and, available to the report admin. And you should definitely take advantage of those. If you're not, again, for some of you, you may have found some of these things to be very elementary because you've been doing those for quite a while. But now, hopefully, whenever you get another report admin, or if there's someone that you want to promote up a role to do report admin, rather than you having to now take the time to teach them some of these things, just reference them back to this Academy session and they'll learn the ability to do all of those things from there. So there's all of the different ServiceNow documents that I referenced to create this Academy session. And then there are ServiceNow community. There's two links there, one for the blog about report sources, and then also the analytics in Quebec, where we talk about report functions and some other great things, business calendars and things like that you should definitely look at. And I'll make sure that I also put in the one for multiple data sets and drill downs. So again, hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully you learned something from this that you weren't maybe utilizing. And again, if you already knew about all this stuff, that is awesome that you do. Use this as a training tool for other people that you're going to give that ability to do. So with that, do we have any questions? And Adam, I cannot see in the Q&A because of the way that my screens are sharing. So if you got anything, you're gonna have to read them to me.
Sure. Thanks, Thomas, for going over that stuff. So there's a couple questions that came up. We've answered some of them, but I think it'd be good to answer them for the whole crowd. And please feel free to throw them out there, keep adding into the questions. So one came up, started out with report statistics. So do you know when report statistics were introduced? Should everybody see those, or is that something that was new in Quebec?
No, I mean, report statistics, and I would have to actually go right back to the doc. I probably should have put that in there, but you should see that. You know what? I'm not going to guess on when it actually came out. I need to find that answer, and then I can post it right here in the chat if I can get another screen to come up here.
And it, I do know
unless you already know the answer.
All supported releases have it. Yeah. I do know that. I don't recall when it came in, but it has been around. And there is a note to that. It's been around for a long time, and I think we referred to the runs field, which also used to be the total number of executions. I think at some point it was relabeled from total number of executions, which is a rather long label, to runs. So you'll see either one of those two things. But everybody on the call should have access to it, unless you were running a very, very old release that's not supported anymore.
Correct. Yeah. I just don't know exactly when it came.
Right. And then a question came in about performance of report sources and the advantage of it. So I think we talked about that they're easier to manage. The names are really nice to use. I did want to clarify, they have no performance impact natively. If it's the exact same conditions in a report or report source or list view for that matter, it is the exact same performance. But in practice, I do see a performance improvement by using them because it allows me to uh, make sure I'm using the most optimized conditions. So
Correct.
all of us have seen seen our users who write some very creative, inspiring, artistic set of conditions um, that don't perform well. And what I'm able to do with a report source is make sure that I have tuned those conditions to be the most optimal they can be. And whether that means I've added an index or more likely I'm going to use an index that I know exists, I will get better performance out of it. And the really simple example out of this is that customers a user goes in and is looking at incidents, and I have 3 million incidents in my table, and they do open equals state equals open. Super reasonable. I get what they're trying to do. It absolutely makes sense. But I believe by default, state is not indexed on the task table. It might be, it might have been added on your instance, and it might be now, but at one point it was not indexed. So state equals open required a full table scan. Now they might have, and there probably wasn't a date condition because they just want to know open incidents. So a very reasonable condition of state equals open required a full table scan of 3 million records. What I'll do in my report source is state equals open and active equals true, because any incident that has a state of open is active equals true. And there is an out of the box index, and there always has been on the active field. So because I add that additional condition, my performance goes, instead of scanning 3 million records, I'm scanning 30,000 records, and my performance goes along with that and cuts the time amazingly. And because something like that, where I just go open incidents, is so commonly used, I now have improved I've improved the performance on every report that does that. So I might have 50 reports now that are 10 times faster. So again, in practice for those big reports, I definitely want to use report sources, and it also allows me to make changes very easily as I have to adapt to those. So I want to point out that while the conditions are the same and there's not precompiled, there's no inherent performance improvement, in the real world, we do see performance improvement, which is why we push for them so adamantly.
Right. And Adam, one other thing that I think that you hit on as well, but I think it just has incredible value to report sources, is when you know that there's multiple reports that are using the same report source, and you know that information needs to be changed. And when you do that, that's going to replicate to all those reports, rather than you having to edit 50 reports when they're using the same report source. So, and I think you hit on that, but I think it needs to be highlighted because that's a really incredible value as well.
Yeah. And a comment came in, which is also a good point, about report sources are the baseline. So if I have a report source, which is open incidents, that's great. Now I have open incidents in the report. I can add more, like for my group that are P1s. You can always add more conditions to a report source. You just can't change the underlying ones, or the users can't. So it's a great way to tee up the ball for your users to get really close to what they want, where they can then just add a little bit more to it. So I don't want to have 1,000 report sources, but I'm going to have open incidents. I'm going to have incidents close this week, close this quarter, perhaps the ones that I know people go towards. We're going to put those in there so that they don't have to know what's going on. It's super helpful if I have table names that incidents easy. People get incident, but as we get into more complex things like incident SLAs, maybe they don't know the name of the table, and you can give it a much more descriptive name. Okay. And then some questions about maps that came in general. And I want to point out that the map stuff, there's a lot that comes out of box. Most customers don't have to add more maps. So you should have maps. If you don't have the out of box maps, then please put a case in. But the out of box maps are there. They work really well, whether you're doing the heat maps or you're using lat and long to get the pins. Just go see what's out there. You can copy the existing ones. If those maps aren't enough for the heat maps, you can add more, as Thomas talked about. It's an open standard that comes out there. There's documentation on how to do it. But most people what's out of box is useful enough. It gets you where you want to get to. But if you do have some custom regions, or you need to dive deeper into something that you can't do out of box, you can create your own. And I wanted to point out an item that crosses a lot of what we talked about. So whether it's report ranges, chart colors, some of the other things. Calendars are the same way. A lot of these settings are not report specific, but are table specific. So they are global to the table. A report range, you can only have one report range per table per field. So I will have a different report range for incident than I do for problem, because incidents I want resolved in hours, and my report ranges are going to be hyper focused on hours. Hour 1, hour 2, hour 4. I'm going to group them that way. Problems might be days or weeks, right? Hopefully not, but real world, they're going to be a longer time frame. My buckets need to be different. The ranges need to be different. So it's one per table. But on incident, I can only have one on incident for start date. I can only have one report range per date. Same thing for chart colors. I will just add in one way. If I need to have two, I'm not going to do one per report, but if I need to have two or I need to have three for my company, one trick that I have used in the past is to create a view. And I create a database view that is a one table view. And all that effectively lets me do is create an alias for that table, which allows me to create a different report range, a different chart color type of information. So it doesn't work for all this functionality, but for a lot of this, if you have to create two or three, database views can be your friend. A single table database view can let you get rid of add something else that's in there. That does add complications in some reporting, because now I have two tables that are the same thing, and it's not always the best solution, but it is something that you can do, certainly in some cases. A really great question about keyword filters and which fields are specified in the keyword filter. And I don't have this up in front of me, but the keyword filter is leveraged. It was where we used the leveraged text indexing. And I believe there are definitely docs on this, but I believe if you wanted to add something to a keyword filter, what you would need to do is to modify the dictionary attribute to include it in the text index. We can look that up. If you have a question about it, try searching the docs, because I think there's an article in there specifically. But if not, then post a question in the community, and we'll get that answered, because I know specifically that there is a way to do that, and you have control of what's in there. Really great example. I had a table that referenced another field. There was a sister table that came through. Think of it as like case and incident, and the reference field wasn't part of the keyword search, so I couldn't just type it in. So we just added that field to the keyword search, and so now on the global search, it would come in. So you do want to be cognizant of what are keywords and what aren't keywords for you. But that information is in the docs. If you look for Zing or text search or index, it'll come in there and explicitly tell you how to do it. And I'm fairly certain that is an attribute on the column, whether you want it indexed or not. Another question came in about function fields. Let's talk about that really quickly. So in the function fields, first of all, you can nest them. It's a little bit interesting with the syntax, but you absolutely can nest them. They are defined on what you can get. It's not JavaScript. So one of the trade-offs we get awesome performance, but there are restrictions on what we can do. You can only use the fields we have. The question specifically came up about a really great use case about, I want to get how long this has been open in wall clock. I just want how long it's been open, pure and simple. And to do that, you need the now function. And I'm fairly certain there's a way to do this. I do not know how to do it off the top of my head, but I'm going to go figure it out. John, you asked that question. If you want to post it in the community, feel free to tag me or Thomas, and we will get that answer. And if not, we'll have the enhancement request. But I believe there is a way to do it. I just think the syntax is a bit odd. And I think that's a great one that we'll try and get added to the docs to get that use case in there so other people can find it in the future. So again, if you want to post that in the community, we'll follow up with that answer for you and make sure you get it. Okay, another report stats question coming in about, is the run, I believe this is report stats, is the run on running reports independent from dashboards? And I think the quick answer is no. It includes running on dashboards. There is a field which just runs from home pages, which I do not recall off the top of my head if it counts dashboards or not. I think it does, but I'm unsure. But report runs counts dashboard views as well. So when you view a dashboard and it's got 8 reports on it, you'll see 8. The report stats for all 8 of those come up. So those report stats are views of the report, and there are other fields in there if you go dig in about, is the report scheduled? Is it a scheduled report? And I believe scheduled reports don't update the last runtime, if I remember off the top of my head, but dashboards do, and direct views of the report definitely do increment the number of runs in the runtime. Okay, good. We have a couple more difficult ones, so I think we can go in there since we have a few minutes. So the first one that's been in here, we're going to talk about it really quickly, is if I have a database view where I join my data and I get duplicates. I don't want duplicates. What do I do about that? And I've been actually talking about this a little bit. So the couple questions that I have, or a couple comments that I'll have, and this does get to be use case specific, but again, I have an example for this would be, I have incident SLA, and I had an SLA that was canceled and a new one. So incident SLA repeats incident. I could have 5 rows for the same incident, and potentially from the same SLA, because the same SLA, there are 2 records in task SLA for the same SLA. How do I handle that? So the answer that I like most of the time is that I have some field that I can join on, like a latest field. So if I were doing, whether I do it or not, I don't know, but I would, on the record that has multiple, I'd add like an active flag. So when I add a new record to it, a business rule would set, this is the one I want to join to, or this is, there's 5 in here that I don't care about, and this one, the 6th one, is the one I care about. That doesn't work out all the time. It doesn't work out all the time. I like it because it's clean, it's efficient. I can index on it if I need to. But the other alternative I've seen, and there's an article on this on the community that somebody brought up, and it's pretty interesting, was on your database view. On your database view, add a before query business rule, which modifies the query effectively to only get you the one you want. So let's say I want the latest record, the latest change associated to this CI. You can't just dot walk to that, but you can get all the changes for the CIs and then have a script included in a query that gives you what the latest one is, and then filter to those sysids in a before query, so your user doesn't even see that it's happening, and it happens. Now, you have to join a lot of data to get that. So there could be a performance drag because you're actually pulling back a lot more data and then hiding it. But often it works pretty well. And that works for things like, I want the latest change. Ideally, and I think we have some articles on this, ideally the latest change would just go update the CI with a reference to the latest change. So I have a business rule that runs every time I submit a change for a CI. Every time I submit a change, it goes and looks at the CI, updates a reference to the latest change. That's my most ideal because it's distributing the work. I only have to do that analysis. When I submit a change, there's just a little bit of work to run the association, nice and clean. If I can't do that for whatever reason, then I might go to using the before query business rule and get it. And then the third case in this is that there really are multiple, like the multiple SLAs. The SLA did fire twice. Which one, how do I get the distinct? You don't. That they did fire twice. So very use case specific on what is the right answer. What do you want to do? A couple different ways of doing it, and it matters on the read to write balance. How do I distribute the work? Is it something I only need to read once a quarter? Then I might do it in a before query business rule. If it's something that I read very rarely, or I read pretty commonly, and I write very infrequently, then I might look at the business rule type. So lots of different options to do them, and it will matter on what your use case is, under which one's the right one to use. Also, actually, I'll add in, because I just did this in some other job, is that I used a remote table, which allows me to script it. A remote table has some issues, particularly the remote tables don't work with performance analytics. But if I were doing something like this in reporting, I might look at using a remote table, which allows me to create a table on the fly, that is usable in reporting, looks and smells like a table most of the time, except for performance analytics. But it's created via JavaScript on the fly and can use other queries. A big restriction is there's only 1,000 rows 1,000 rows at a time related in a remote table, but it's come in handy for me when I need to do some similar things. Okay. Next question came in. Are there plans to extend reporting to allow inline queries rather than creating database views? And I in this example, I'm not sure if inline means subqueries. And simple answer would be not expanding more, but there are ways of doing some things, and it will depend on your use case. But related list conditions took a big step to this. Many use cases where we needed to use views, we now use related list conditions. And actually it can handle some cases that database views didn't handle very well. So related list conditions are important. And then while it's not an actual subquery, using a dynamic filter condition helps me out a lot of here. I effectively write subqueries by using dynamic filter options or scripted filters. There's some community articles on this. So if you have a use case that you're curious about on how do we do this, if you want to post it in the community, we can take a look at it. And if there's a blog post, which is it's something about advanced query techniques, and it walks through related list conditions and dynamic filter options and scripted filters, which allow you to do a lot of those things. But straight inline subquery, I have not seen. I don't know of plans to implement that. If it is something that you'd like to see, particularly if you have a use case for what you would need to be able to do on it, please submit that to the idea portal on what you want to have, and we'll certainly get that to our inbound product managers on how we can address that. But I don't think that's coming anytime soon unless we see a big ask for it and a compelling use case for it. And there are, even if we are going to put it in, it's going to be a little while. So if you have a use case that you need to solve now or make it helpful, please just go ahead and submit that or ask in the community about your use case, and we'll try and get you a good answer for that. Okay, a quick one. Thomas, I don't know if you know the answer to this. Is it possible to add a list report to a portal page?
I believe that list reports you cannot on a portal page. I remember reading something about this a little bit ago, so I get confused if it's a single score, if it's a list report. And obviously, you probably already know the answer. So, but I think you can't. I know it's one of them that you cannot. I feel like it's a list report.
I think you're correct. I think you can't add them. Single scores, I'm pretty sure you can.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to add a normal list, since you can recreate it on your own.
Right.
That's a good question to put in the community. Maybe somebody else knows. I am not the strongest on Service Portal.
I believe it is no. I feel pretty confident that it is no, but I think you can recreate something similar inside the portal itself.
Yeah, you definitely can put a list on.
Yeah.
So you should be able to get the same thing or similar experience.
Right.
And then last question we have in here: is there any option to enable select all option in a page filter on a PA dashboard? And the select all. Oh no, so I think this use case comes in specifically on interactive filter. That if you don't select anything, then it gives you the full report, but that's not restricted to just what's in the filter. The inverse of this is that if I have 20 groups, so I have all incidents. I have a report that's all incidents that has 300 groups. I have an interactive filter that just has my groups, that has my 20 groups. There's no good way of selecting my 20 groups without selecting them each one individually. Because if I go in the filter and click no filter, then I get all 300 groups. If I click on one, I get 1, 2, I get 2. But if I want 20, I want 20. So I'm not aware of that being in there in Classic. It might be something that's coming in the Now Experience dashboards and filters, because those have been completely redone, embedding a lot of the requirements and asks that you've had. But I'm not aware of that specifically. I'm not aware of that specifically coming in. And the way that I handle that generally, which is not a great option, is that I don't do select all. But if select all is my groups, then I might just add a second filter, which is show me my groups, or possibly a custom interactive filter. But there's not. I'd want a good use case to do it. You can make it happen. You can make it reasonable, but you have to do something custom to make it work. So I don't have a great answer for you there. But if you do have a strong use case, again, post something in the community, and we can send you the right links on how you could accomplish it if you really needed to.
I'm answering that last one.
Okay.
Typing it there. So maybe if you last 3 minutes, get that poll out there, I guess, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So we do have a quick poll for all of us that are on here. Let me launch this. Quick follow-up to what we've talked about today. So what what action you're going to take from this session, as well as what did you learn? What would you like some more information on? So if you don't mind, in the next minute or so, it should only take you it should take you a minute to go through, fill that out. Very helpful for us to plan future sessions for you. And I wanted to add in, because I saw it and it made my heart smile. I've been around ServiceNow for quite some time. And I was using a Now experience. I was in a workspace, and in the workspace, I grabbed a column and I resized it, and it made me so happy. Something that we haven't been able to resize columns in Classic, but that is in workspaces. We are able to do that. So as we move forward in the next few releases, as you move into workspaces, I think it's going to make a lot of us happier. It's going to make a lot of our lives easier. The things that we want to be able to do, the way we want to interact. Again, if you haven't seen Now Experience, we did a session on it coming through, and you'll see some other ones that are out there available in the community. The Now Experience, the user experience for ServiceNow has been rethought. And for those of you that are on ServiceNow, we do a lot of things the same way we did a year ago, the way we did them 5 years ago, the way we did them 10 years ago. Certainly some things have improved and gotten better and more streamlined, but other things haven't. Now Experience, it is a new user experience that is going to address a lot of what we are looking for. And that relates directly to, there are several different ways to dot walk in the UI and what you can do. Do I need to show related fields, not show related fields? Lots of stuff we have to do. In Now Experience, all those things have been unified. At the end of the day, we started over with the new user experience that's consistent, that's more intuitive, that's a bit more modern. So I think there's a lot of good to come out of there. But as part of that, we're investing a lot in the new consolidated, improved user experience. And so some of the older stuff, it'll get fixed. It is absolutely supported. You don't need to run away from it, but there aren't going to be a lot of enhancements there because we're enhancing them in the Now Experience. And then I will add in there about tracking who viewed it. In report stats, you get total counts, but you don't see who viewed a report. And if you want to view who viewed a report, there's a blog post that explains how you can set that up. But in whatever we want to go through, there is an event that's dropped. Whenever any user views a report, there is an event called report.view, I believe. And from that, you can do whatever you want to do. You could have it send you an email or send you a Slack message absolutely every time somebody views a report or a specific report, or you can log it, or again, whatever you want to do. But there is an event dropped, which you can then add a listener to. It is that listener. There is a listener now that updates report stats, but you could have it do something. I'd leave that, but you could have it do something else as well. All right. Well, Thomas, I wanted to thank you. I thought that was a great session. Lots of attendees, lots of great questions. I really appreciate everybody stepping in to ask us something. And thank you for all of you who've answered the poll. But Thomas, thank you for preparing that and walking us through all those great features. It looks like a lot of people learned a lot of new things today.
Good. Glad to hear that.
All right. And so with that, I think we're going to wrap up, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.